Hello, and welcome to my magical forest for magical stories. Last week, we talked about Inari, the Japanese deity of rice and agriculture, and so many more things. This week, we're going to be talking about the Valkyrie, Hildr, and the stories of her, including stories about Valkyries. Before we begin today, I just wanted to let you know that if you are into Norse mythology and you want to learn a lot more about it and just kind of the language, the legends in more deep detail, a lot of the information I am using is from Dr. Jackson Crawford, and his information is down below in my description. Amazing university professor, and he makes it fun. He's fun to watch. I really like his channel. So I'm dedicating a lot of this knowledge to him and the information that he presented, and I tried so hard to pronounce these names properly, but I might have failed. But let's get going. Let's talk about Valkyries. Let's talk about Hildr and my interpretation and what I have found. Let's talk about Hildr and Valkyries briefly, because we will be talking about Valkyries over and over and over again on this channel. Hildr literally means battle. How badass is that? Even further, she is a Valkyrie, which actually means chooser of the slain. In Norse mythology, Valkyries have a variety of roles. Some are groups of maidens who serve the god Odin and were sent by him to battlefields to choose the slain who were worthy of a place in Valhalla. This is an absolute honor to the Vikings. Some Valkyries rode to the battlefield on horses wearing helmets and shields. Sometimes they flew through the air or over the sea. Some Valkyries had the power to kill warriors. They just were not digging. They were like, screw you, we're done. Others were guardians of people or even ships that they favored. Old Norse literature made references to purely supernatural Valkyries and to human Valkyries with supernatural powers, or humans that obtained the supernatural power of being a Valkyrie. Valkyries were embodiments of fairness, brightness, gold, bloodshed, of course, all the things that the Vikings enjoyed. We're going to talk more about this at the end of the story, though. Hildr is really unique and associated with a specific Germanic hero legend, which I cannot pronounce, but I will try. It's called Hjaðningavíg, or even better, the legend of Hedin and Hogni, or also called the Saga of Hild. Just a little context for the story. I won't go into this too far, but Freyja, one of the main goddesses from Norse mythology, she sleeps with a bunch of dwarves and obtains a necklace. Odin is very upset with her and decides that he wants Loki to steal this necklace from her because he's pissed. So Loki does this. Freyja goes up to Odin and asks why and how she can get it back. So Odin says what she has to do is get two kings to go to war with each other for basically an eternity. And this is so that he can have the most worthy of men sit with him in the halls of Valhalla. So that's what she does. So either she decides to turn herself into a particular person, or she sends another Valkyrie to start this process. And this is the story. So, Hogni and Heðinn were really good friends. So they're both really great warriors. They're buddies. They even make an oath of brotherhood, and half of their possessions are split between each other. Like, even their kingdoms are split amongst each other. So Heðinn goes on a stroll to the woods because, it's pretty outside. And behold, he is approached by Gondol. This is another Valkyrie, but some people argue that this actually might be Freyja in disguise, or Freyja herself. So she gives him a drinking horn full of this liquid that basically makes Heðinn forget his oath to his newly found brother. Gondul says to this king that his buddy Hogni is still technically better than he is. Hogni has a wife, and you don't. So clearly he's more accomplished than you. Heðinn replies that he is going to eventually marry Hogni's daughter and ask him, and Hildr is beautiful, and, so what's the big deal? Gondul says that's basically weak. It's way more glorious to slaughter his friend's wife, abduct his daughter for himself. The more blood, the better. This is the Viking way. You gotta do it this way. Now, because Heðinn drank this mysterious drink, he's like, you're right, Gondul, this sounds way more legit. So far the lesson is, don't take foreign drinks from strangers. We should all know that by now, but just be sure, just don't do it. Heðinn does exactly this. He's like, screw friendship. He takes the woman's advice, slaughters his friend's wife, takes Hildr to be his wife, and runs away. Hogni comes back to his kingdom, wife dead, daughter gone. Wow, he's pissed. It's very understandable. So he decides to go sail after Hildr, and he finally finds her. Heðinn has been waiting with his army, but Hildr greets her father, gives him a necklace on Heðinn's behalf. And this is for reconciliation and peace. And I totally understand Hogni's response. He's like, no. I love you, but no. He also declares that he's already unsheathed his sword. And this is kind of what the poem says about this epic, bloodthirsty sword. Quote, "Thou hast made this offer over late. If thou wouldest make peace, for now I have drawn thine sleeve, which the dwarves made, and which must cause a man's death every time it is bared, nor ever fails in its stroke. Moreover, the wound heals not if one be scratched with it." It's almost like a zombie sword. Anyway, now begins the famous battle called Orkney's Eternal Battle. The kings fought all effing day, but in the evening the combatants retired to their ships because, warriors need sleep too. During the night, however, Hildr went out on the battlefield and revived the slain. The next day, the kings went to the battlefield and fought, and so did those who had fallen the day before. Thus, the fight went on one day after another. All who fell, and their weapons, and their shields were turned to stone. But when the new day dawned, she resurrected them with incantations, rose the dead men, and fought. And their weapons were renewed. It is said in the songs that the fight shall continue until the time of Ragnarok. There we have the end. Kind of. Many of the Viking stories that we see are written by Christians. Surprise again! So we do have poems like the Poetic Edda, and we also have the Prose Edda, but Vikings were notorious for passing down oral stories. They didn't really write a lot of things down, and that's okay, except for sometimes, like right now. So we do have an end to this battle, apparently. So the end of the story is actually the arrival of Christianity, and it dissolves the old curse that traditionally was to endure until Ragnarok. And this is about King Olaf I of Norway, who was the first to encourage Christianity through Norway and Iceland. So it's kind of interesting how that all works. This story with Hildr is a little bit of a newer Viking story, but again, written by and interpreted by Christians. Things to consider when we are observing these stories and myths is that the people who write them, we have to ask ourselves particular questions. Why are they writing these stories? What parts are they taking and keeping? Are they adjusting parts of these stories to fit better into their scope of the world? What things do they find interesting enough to write about? Which leads me into just briefly the topic of Valkyries. Some people believe that because we have Viking women shield maidens in Norse mythology means that Viking women are obviously warriors as well, and that's shown in a lot of our pop culture. This isn't necessarily the case. So Valkyries, almost in some scholars' belief, act as a vessel for battle. So the men in these stories and sagas lust for Valkyries just like one would lust for battle, whereas women in their home wouldn't necessarily want them to go to battle. In fact, women are kind of in a different sphere altogether than men in a lot of these Viking and Norse myths. Some texts in the Poetic Edda have indicated that Valkyries could potentially even be rivals to other women's livelihoods, because a lot of the time they initiate or push for bloodshed and battle. They remind men of their need to protect their families and their land, and they draw them in with their beauty, their strength and power. Vikings also glorified masculinity. And what do Valkyries and Viking men have in common? They're both incredibly masculine. Valkyries don men's armor. To some extent, they might even enjoy bloodshed. All of these are more masculine traits. So the concern a bit is that we are glorifying male roles over female roles, presenting women as having importance only when they have roles such as Valkyries, where they go into battle slaying monsters or other men. And we're overshadowing other ways in which women are actually socially important. And we don't get a lot of those stories in Norse mythology of different kinds of women, or even the draw or importance of those kinds of women. So we will be talking more about Valkyries later, and Hildr is a little bit of a different Valkyrie because she doesn't necessarily don armor. She's not flying in with a glorious horse, but she is inciting more battle, perpetuating the battle to continue forward, and glorifying it in a lot of ways, making it seem like they have a place in the halls of Valhalla, so they must continue on. I know, this is a broad brushstroke on Valkyries. This is a very, very small legend about Hildr. It's her legend, but I know that I did give a very small overview on Valkyries and kind of my feelings towards it in some studies that they have done. But as we go further into Norse mythology over time, we will be discussing more about Valkyries, shield maidens, female roles in Norse culture and Viking culture, and just how that is integrated more into their mythology at a later date. But I wanted to just give you a small little tidbit of my feelings towards Valkyries and Norse mythology, and hopefully that encourages you to look more at some of the descriptions down below. Again, check out Dr. Jackson Crawford for more information about Norse culture and mythology, but there's a lot of information out there. Just be careful because there's a lot of other information out there as well. Continue to watch for more mythology. There's a ton of mythology out there, and you can keep watching over here. We have a lot of other places around the world to discuss. You can also look at my socials for more art on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, all kinds of stuff at Kaiti Draws, plus my website. Next week, we are going to be talking about the Kasi sun goddess, so Kasi from India. Her name is Kasigni, I believe, or Kasigni. So check us out. Wait 2 weeks till next Monday, but keep watching for more mythology.